What's up, everybody? This is Eddie with Flex Machine Tools, and welcome to our video cast series episode of Flex and Friends, a video cast experience where I'm going to be sitting down, chatting, and hanging out with some of the industry's best, brightest, loudest, proudest, most passionate, and profound thought leaders. So for this specific segment, we're going to be talking about manufacturing, but not just manufacturing, but the importance and the relevance of injection molding. And our special guest for this episode is my good friend and recent president and CEO of ProPlastics here in Sydney, Ohio, Dan McMahon. So let's bring him on to talk today. Dan, what's going on? Welcome to the episode. How you doing today, dude?
Good. Yourself?
Hey, it is well. It is a great day to talk about manufacturing. And man, I tell you what, I'm curious. I need to learn about injection molding. I know you've schooled me up a little bit, but we got to start talking about this here soon for the segment. But before we get rocking and rolling, just because I know you, that's great. But let's let the viewers know a little bit about who Dan is. So simply enough, who is Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me. I'm excited to be on, obviously. Yeah, so Dan McMahon, I'm 36, born and raised here in Sydney, Ohio. As you said, husband, 3 kids. So I got some little ones. I know we ran into each other at the soccer field, in the basketball court a few times.
We're in the thick of it, man. We're in the thick of it.
Yeah. So started ProPlastics, president and owner of ProPlastics here in Sydney. We kicked things off here really early April of 2021. So like I said, yeah, I'm a Sydney guy. I went to college down in Savannah, Georgia. I've been in manufacturing pretty much my whole life. And I'm just, out here trying to make a change, trying to grow the industry.
There we go. And then so obviously we're going to talk about kind of what led you to kind of get into ProPlastics and doing the crazy thing that is starting your own business, and not only your own business, but in manufacturing alone. I know everybody wants to hear, we're going to dive into that here in a second, but we need to know a little bit about where was Dan before ProPlastics? What were you doing, man?
Yeah. So I'll kind of start back, in high school. I worked in a machine shop here in Sydney. I worked at G&G Tool, worked my way up. I started out in the quality lab and worked in machining pretty much my whole life, but went off to college when I was 20 and moved down to Savannah, Georgia. I went to school, got my bachelor's in business administration. I came back up here in 2008 and I was back in machining. So I worked in machining all the way up until really the end of 2012. And that's when I got into injection molding. So I had a brief stint when I was in college at an injection molding company, and that's kind of how I knew about plastics, and then I ran into my old boss, end of 12, and he said, "Hey, we're looking for a sales guy. You want to come back?" So I went back to another molder over in Logan County, just, half an hour down the road, and worked there, started out doing sales and worked my way up. When I left there, I was the vice president of sales and marketing. So really, I've been in injection molding for the last 7-8 years.
Right. So obviously a little bit of a base there, starting from when you were younger, being in that shop environment. So clearly something that had an impact on you in general. And it's good to be able to have that experience that you brought into it. And so now that we know a little bit about Dan before ProPlastics and kind of a little bit of that journey into it, I got to know, what led you to want really to start your own business? Like, where did that thought come from? What inspired you the most?
I pretty much always wanted to own my own business. I can remember really, Eddie, from probably the time I was 15. I think maybe my first job, I was actually, besides having a paper route, I think my first job, I was probably 14 years old, worked at a restaurant here in Sydney, bussing tables, and business just always, I just gravitated to knowing more about management, knowing more about the owners. I kind of knew, hey, I think I can do this. I want to do this. I want to know more about this. Always asking questions. When I was 20 years old, my dad, so kind of late in life, he decided to go out on his own and open up a machine shop in Russia, Ohio. So really watching him, and there's more I'll get to, but watching him kind of start his own business from the ground floor up really put it in my head like, hey, I know this is what I want to do. I have to do this. I got to go out on my own,
Right.
and I got to do something. And really my whole family. So we're all kind of transplants, to Sydney, the Sydney area. My mom's dad, my grandpa on my mom's side, they came from Cleveland. He moved here to work at Copeland. And then my dad's dad, they're from Michigan. He moved here to go to Leroy. So, obviously one grandpa's building, scroll compressors. The other one's building compressors. And that's kind of how we ended up here. And
Nice.
Just kind of, watching my family all kind of grow and do better in manufacturing kind of drove me to, hey, I want to be the next one. I want to start my own thing. I want to go out on my own, and I want to create jobs. I want to do good for the community. I want to be a part of something, I want to be a part of something big. I want to start something, and really just honestly, from the time I was young, I just knew that, this is what I wanted to do, and then obviously things come into play. Like you got to have the experience, right?
Right.
Your kids, timing plays a big part of it. And
yes.
If I had to do all over again, maybe I would have started this a couple years ago, a couple years sooner, but I probably wasn't ready. So, always knew this is what I wanted to do. I just kind of waited on the right time to jump on the opportunity.
Well, hey, the timing is definitely right now, and you're doing it, which is just definitely a feather you got to put in your cap every single day, that you are doing the thing that really so many people are terrified of doing. And though it'd always be great if we started earlier, you started nonetheless. So kudos and hats off. So obviously you're up and rolling, you're doing your thing, working on some cool projects, but you could have gone into really any type of business, especially with your skills, your background, your charisma. There's so many things you could have done. Why in the world did you choose manufacturing specifically?
Yeah, I really think that comes down to just, here in the heart of Ohio and Shelby County, we make stuff, right? We take raw materials and we turn them into, products that consumers use, or parts that are used to produce, other, something else down the line. I don't know. I guess really it's just kind of a mix between what I've always known, what I've always been around, and then just that urge to have, to take some, start with something and turn it into something else. As basic as that sounds, just making, creating, I guess is really the right word.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be complicated by any means. It just has to be something that you deeply care about, and you clearly deeply care about it. And then so additionally to that, knowing why you went into manufacturing, let's take a step lower and get a little deeper with that. Why specifically in manufacturing did you choose plastics and injection molding?
Yeah. And that's really, I fell in love with the industry. Like I said, I had really a lot of history, or, a lot of background in the machining industry. And when I kind of met injection molding, if you will, I fell in love. The industry as a whole, the people that I've come across, the people that I've worked with, the people that I've worked for, it's just, it's a little bit different than the machining industry, I guess. And it's really just kind of suits me. It makes sense to me, just the whole process really makes sense. Kind of in the manufacturing, the last question, what we do is custom molding. So we're molding parts for OEMs. My goal ultimately, and I know I've kind of told you about this, in the past conversation, is to get into some proprietary stuff.
Yeah.
And that, I'm not really ready to talk about that yet, but that.
Yeah. All right. You're going to tease us like that. I see how it is, man. I see how it is.
It happens to be a molded part, and,
very cool.
I don't know. I just really fell in love with plastics in general. Everything from watching, the resins being compounded, to the injection molding process, blow molding, extrusion. We don't do any of that here, but it's always just fascinated me.
Well, clearly it is for sure, with you being passionate about it and also taking that leap to really make this your own and to do what you're trying to do. And I think it's amazing. And I'm actually interested to see how you use it as a vehicle to accomplish other things in life outside of just making widgets, right?
Yeah.
So, which is great. And then really, before you and I talked, I'm gonna be honest with you, wasn't really familiar with what injection molding was, what the process is, what that even meant. And so what I'd like to do, I want to pull up a quick video, and I'd love for you to kind of walk us through what that means. So let's get this bad boy pulled up here real quick. So we got this. We're going to hit play. So walk us through it, man. What's up?
And I'll tell you what, when you start to see those pellets drop, can you pause that real quick right there?
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
So what we're seeing right now, those red, that's the raw material. So what we do in injection molding is we're buying a compounded plastic. It's extruded. Typically, you'll start out with some sort of base resin, like we'll say polypropylene. And then you can add different glass fibers, talc, all kinds of different fillers, depending on what the application calls for, into that resin. So what you're seeing right now is that's the actual raw material. So it's falling into that hopper. And then as we go, it's going to fall down into the screw and barrel. That's where we're zooming in on right now. So that's a screw and barrel. And what this process right now is doing, Eddie, is that those pellets they're going down inside that screw. There's heater bands that kind of heat the plastic to help melt it. And then also you'll see how there's that reverse taper. So it's using, just friction to melt that plastic. And then right on the end of that is check ring, or the screw tip. So that big red you see right there, that's what's called the shot size. So what that screw is doing is it's getting the correct amount of plastic, molten plastic, ready to go into the tool, and then it just shoots it in there. So that process usually takes, maybe to actually inject the plastic, you're probably looking at anywhere from half a second to a couple seconds, depending on part design.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it's doing is it's injecting it into the tool right now. And then you have a cooling process. So, basically that screw stays forward and it keeps the pressure on, in the cavity. So the molten plastic can cool and reach what we call in the industry gate, your gate freeze. So your gate freezes off. The molten plastic's no longer going to go in and out of the tool. It's in there. And then you just have a cooling phase. So the cooling phase is just letting that plastic sit in the tool and kind of, cool down or cure, if you will, harden. That way, when the tool opens and ejects, the parts hold their shape, right?
Right. No, that's okay. It makes a lot more sense. And for some reason in my mind, I was thinking this is some crazy, elaborate, granular scientific process, which obviously there are lots of elements to that, but it's actually more simplistic than what I thought. You melt plastic, you put it into a mold, you let it cool, you drop it, right? I mean, I don't want to water it down, but
and that really is what it is. So there is obviously a lot of scientific processes that go into developing the resins.
Sure.
And then also actually molding the parts. So there's some prep work. Some materials are hygroscopic, so they take on moisture. So sometimes you have to dry materials to get all that moisture out. Not all resins you have to do that with, but and then the actual process of getting a part that's really where the science comes in, and that's over my head, Eddie. So I have a partner. He's a plastics engineer, and he's good. He takes care of all that stuff, and I just go out there and try to sell it.
That's all right, baby. That's why you guys are partners. That's completely okay. I mean, I definitely can't speak even somewhat intelligently to it, but at least for people like myself and anybody watching this, we now have a little bit better understanding as to what injection molding is. And then so when we're talking, and now we know the what, I'd love to kind of get your take on how is injection molding or plastics, whatever it may be, how is that currently impacting manufacturing we're talking about today? And then we'll look into the future here on the next question. But for now, what do you think it's doing for the current market today, man?
Yeah. So obviously, anytime you're looking at, and I usually use the analogy of like really look at the automotive industry or the transportation industry. So whether it's cars, buses, airplanes, the goal is to be more fuel efficient, right? Yeah. So really how injection molding, is currently impacting manufacturing. What we're doing is always looking for ways to, convert metal to plastic, right? We want to take weight. We want to take out, that the heavy weight out of cars, out of planes. We're doing everything we can to reduce weight, make things more efficient, faster, lighter, stronger. So, the stronger part is where the really smart guys come in, and they're every day we're developing. We're seeing new thermoplastics being coming out, and everybody's really just trying to find, like I said, a cheaper, lighter, but also stronger way to produce, right?
Yep.
So I would say that's probably the biggest way that injection molding has really impacted manufacturing in a whole is just, we can do things faster. So typically, I don't know, let me see if I can pull this up. So I know I've kind of showed you these little hitch plugs, one of the jobs we're making.
Yeah, those are sweet.
So this is an injection molded part. Obviously, if this was metal, you're looking at tubing, probably a weld. You got a lot of time in there. As to where we injection mold these, we're pumping out one of these every 39 seconds.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that actually looks pretty sweet, because you see some really nice hitch covers, obviously that metal, and you realize there's the welding, there's the fab work there. And the fact that you can bust out that many without diminishing the quality like significantly. I mean, it's a hitch cover. That's great. Moving to that production world, that there's clear benefits from what I'm hearing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And
okay. And then
I was going to say, you think about, every time you, really, anytime you sit down in your car and you just start to look around at how many things are going from, the grill on your car, they look metal, but they're not anymore. They're injection molded, and then they're chrome plated. But most people just kind of take that for granted. Like, oh yeah, it's, just some kind of mesh, it's steel, but it's not. A lot of that stuff is injection molded. So like I said, we're just always looking for how can we manufacture something out of a thermoplastic that's going to make it more cost effective for the end user, lighter, get better gas mileage. With the EVs, obviously a lot of that taking a lot of weight out. Airplanes, obviously you don't want to get on an airplane that's all steel and heavy, right?
Yikes. No, this makes sense. And so with that, we covered a little bit more of what it is that it's doing today. So let's take a step further. What's injection molding going to be doing for the future? What type of impact are we going to be able to see that have on U.S. manufacturing, or just manufacturing as a whole?
Yeah. And, not to get too far away from injection molding, but personally, I kind of see the natural progression. There's been a lot of focus on 3D printing, right? So there's obviously 3D printing of metal, and there's there's metal injection molding. But personally, I kind of see the next phase of injection molding incorporating the 3D printing. I think in the future, we're getting faster at it. I don't know that 3D printing necessarily will ever, completely get rid of injection molding, but what we're already starting to see so one of the big parts of our process is building the tool. So like in that video, the most expensive part of that, if you're the OEM, is building your actual tool that makes the parts, right? Your mold.
Okay.
So that's typically, it's a very expensive process, and it's typically 10 to 12 weeks long to get a tool, right? So with prototyping, what a lot of people are doing are 3D printing their actual prototype parts. But what we've been seeing lately is, everybody's starting to 3D print the tool. So if you need a part that has the actual strength and integrity of an injection molded part, the 3D print parts, we're not there yet. So what people are doing is they're actually 3D printing the tools. So you can design a tool, 3D print the cavity and core, and you have it, you're not waiting 12 weeks and spending $100,000. You can get a prototype for, $1,000, $1,500. And you have an actual injection molded part in a matter of, a week at a lot less cost. So I really see the 3D printing, helping with the prototyping. Obviously, people are 3D printing prototype parts, but also 3D printing the tooling. So the other thing, if you want an injection molded part like these, let's say I just wanted to change, the shape of this, right? But for a customer who only wanted to buy 100 of them, it's not going to make sense to go out and spend $50,000 on a tool, right?
Sure.
So if we can 3D print that for a lot less, now we're talking, hey, we could probably get that piece price down to something that's a little more manageable, realistic.
Right. No, this all makes sense, man. And what an interesting episode that we've had, learning about a little bit who Dan is, what led you into, taking that leap of faith in the industry that is manufacturing, specifically with injection molding. Learned what injection molding does, what it is, if you will, and then also the impact it's currently having and going to have in the future. So lastly, as we kind of wrap things up, where can we get more information on yourself? Where can we find you, and also learn more about everything you got going on at ProPlastics?
Yeah, I'm a people person, so I'm going to tell you, Eddie, to come see me in person first.
Of course.
You obviously, we find us online, ProPlasticsOhio.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. As I said, we're fairly new, so we're trying to build our social media up still, but we do have everything, and we're putting content out there to let people kind of know who we are. So yeah, find us online, give me a call, send me an email, and our doors are always open.
Well, there we go. Well, we appreciate you not only giving us a little bit of your time, but also kind of just joining us and giving us more insight on the injection molding process and talking about the future of manufacturing. So for all of you, make sure you check out ProPlastics on the web. We got the socials, everything's rocking. You can also find Dan the Man on LinkedIn. So check him out, connect with him. He'd be happy to talk with you, pick your brain, or have you pick his. So he's a great dude to interact with, and we're very appreciative of him being on the segment. And thank all of you for joining us as well. So following this episode, head on over to flexmachinetools.com to check out all the amazing updates that we have. And make sure you check out our YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. We're even messing around on TikTok. But we appreciate each and every one of you. You all stay awesome, stay flexing, and we will see you next time.